Thank you.
Going here, yes. So I'd like to welcome everyone to the joint hybrid planning board meeting of September 11th. I'll take a call to order. Ms. Creighton.
Here.
Mr. Licio.
Here.
Foley.
Here.
Mr. Olney's not with us. Ms. Philbrick.
Here.
And Ms. Tenney.
Here.
Quorum tonight. I'd like to remind all members, guests to be recognized by the chair if you wish to speak. And like last meeting, I want to stress the need to be recognized by the chair. This meeting is being recorded. First item on the agenda, Gail has posted Town of Wenham public hearing notice and Town of Essex notice of this division as receipt of correspondence. Then a Lorraine Ioboni letter came to us late today. I haven't read it. Went to the full board. At this time, I'd like anybody from the public would like to speak to us on any item that's not on the agenda with a limited amount of time. From the public just to speak. Seeing that. So our items on the agenda tonight are basically the same as last meeting. Warrant articles to move forward to special town meeting and discussion. Just FYI, I attended the select board meeting last Monday. Specifically asked them if they were going to have a special town meeting, and they said they still don't know. They didn't think that if there was something, there wasn't anything urgent for them to have a special town meeting. So they said they would know in 2 or 3 weeks if they were going to have one. So I mentioned to them that we had voted that if it was just to have a special town meeting for our items, that we voted not to hold one. So keep that in mind. So moving forward with the first item, an update from the senior housing subcommittee on section 9.4. I understand that you guys met on Friday.
Yeah, we met twice.
Twice.
We met August 31st and last Friday. And we reviewed the goals that we had done in the joint. We had a sort of like a word thing where we talked about goals, which should be in the minutes. Actually, I summarized them. I kind of put them. That's one person's. Anyway, we talked about those, and we sort of talked a lot about the scale of housing appropriate to the districts, and sort of went around trying to figure out what's appropriate and how do we zone it so it's appropriate. So you have to sort of know what you want, and then how to affect that outcome. And we all, after the 31st, we all went off and we're supposed to come back with a proposal for addressing scale. And so on Friday, we had several proposals, one fairly well formed and the others were sort of more ideas. And Chris was not there on Friday, unfortunately. And because I know he had a very specific proposal of 15 units per acre and a minimum if there was a certain minimum number of acres if there was a certain number of units. But we kind of hashed through a lot of different what if scenarios. And I think we talked also about the LCD, housing in the LCD. I'll come back to that in a minute. What we decided on the scale question and actually on the bylaw as a whole is that we still don't know what we want, except some sort of increased density for bonus for senior housing. We have a lot of questions about how to get affordability into senior housing, and we've given some questions to town council for that to answer that, so we can build that into the senior housing. And what we concluded on scale and other issues is that we don't know and that we need to get more information. And so at our next meeting, which will be Friday at 8 AM, we're gonna all come with questions, and we made a short list of people who are in town who are senior housing developers or Mary has already met with the town planner in Hampton, I believe.
Do we have to meet with developers that are in town?
No, well, we'll make a
Okay.
list, yeah. No, it doesn't have to be developers in town, and sort of say, you know, what does the market want? What is it? What are you looking for? And then we can sort of say, does that fit with Manchester? So kind of some background work. And
So they're coming in?
no, we thought we would do it in twos outside, and then we might get more candid responses if it's not in public. And then we'll report back.
Oh.
And it will just be easier to schedule and so forth. And then lastly, we talked about the LCD and housing in it, and sort of challenged the notion of not having housing in the LCD. And what we, I think, concluded is that what we don't want in the LCD is, 2-acre lots with houses distributed as in Zone E, but that a cluster or a group of homes or a group of townhouses that had a built-in community as a residential community of a number of houses that had senior housing, would meet the goals of as one portion of senior housing, would be sort of acceptable as residential, and that, especially with senior housing, it can have a tax benefit without significant services, depending on what is there. We also sort of challenge whether or not our draft bylaw that says that if it's in the LCD, it has to be a larger facility with many services, whether that was really that we wanted to exclude sort of a X number of townhouses in the LCD, which is what the current draft does. So for all those reasons, we decided we will continue to work on it Friday at 8, and that and it was Sue, Mary, and I agreed that we should not put it forward even if there is a town meeting in November, whatever month we're in, November. Anything, I guess before anything to add from either of you guys? Discussion.
I guess I would just add that this is an avenue we're exploring, right? Like that, it's not a definitive, right? I got the impression we're trying to break it down into smaller pieces, right? And reach out to developers, kind of get their take on things, what's attractive to them, what's not. Like Sarah said, I reached out to the Hamilton Town Planner, and I spoke with him this morning on their senior housing bylaw. So I guess in information gathering mode.
Right, I think that the developer question is twofold. One is, what people to help us vision what could be, and also a little bit to hear, if somebody wants an incentive to build a 600 unit, facility out in the LCD, what is it that they want? Because that didn't fit, what might we want to avoid? Just get information, because we understand it's a need, but we're not sure what that is, how to meet the need. And so the people who are working in this area, we thought would be useful to talk with. So, and I want to acknowledge, unfortunately, Chris was not there for the discussion. So, and he's passionate about this topic, and I think I would be remiss I'm accurate to say he will be disappointed. So, and he's worked hard on this issue. So,
How we define what a senior person is and who's allowed to do
so we
that?
did
Has that
send
been-
questions to
is it discriminative?
to Jonathan or to town council about a couple of things. What about, how do you ensure age, and people are doing this other places, so there's got to be a way. And then what does it, what does that define? Is it one person that's over 55 and nobody under 18, or how do you do that? But also particularly, how do we build a bylaw that helps to create incentives for senior housing, but also the affordable piece? And one of the questions is, if you make a affordable requirement in a senior housing facility or collection of homes or whatever it is, does that affordable unit have to be open to families? And can it be also be age restricted? So we debated that, but we thought, let's get town council to weigh in on it. We also asked town council about how do towns do a cap? What's the best way to do it? These are questions that, even if we don't include a cap, might be asked of us, or it might be amendments on the town meeting floor that say, well, I want to only have 10 a year or 100 a year or whatever it is. And knowing what's legal will help us to put forward something, I think, that's stronger, and also to ask and answer questions about it. So
We talked about looking at this by district and what's allowed in each.
we did talk about that.
And that sort of got us into starting with the LCD first, because it seemed the easiest to try and figure out. Because when we started to look at the more complicated districts first, we were having a hard time envisioning, well, what do we really want there? What does the town really want? Our population, our senior population is a diverse economic group, and we just started talking about all those factors. But we were definitely looking at what might be appropriate in each district. If anything, we're being cognizant of, I know Chris's view is that we should have something in every district.
So
So,
allow something.
yeah, allow something in every district.
Okay, any planning board, Christine?
Could you just, I guess I'm confused. So you started with the LCD? Is that correct?
No, well, we discussed, we had a discussion about whether or not housing in the LCD, we've sort of, it's not allowed now. And if you put housing as a collection of houses, not just a single house separated by lots of space, would that be would that help to meet certain people's needs, or be attractive to people, or generate revenue, all the things that, and we used, and Sue came up with the idea of Lyman Circle, which is out on Summer Street, the old horse rink. It's 11 homes that are, I think, on about 10,000 square feet each. And their assessed value is 1.4. So it's obviously not affordable, but it is, we presume, largely owned by people over 55. We didn't have any census data, but that was our sense. And I think that's accurate. I think this, and so and it seems like they're attractive to the market. And so, and are generating few school-aged children. I don't know what or might. So, as a different model than necessarily requiring the LCD to have sort of a full service facility. It doesn't preclude it we can. So we just explored breaking it down by district, and the LCD is the one we talked about. So, and we do have minutes that we've.
So I just hope we get them. So did you guys talk about the difference between like a facility and a development? I mean, I feel like starting to use the correct language, or any language that means something, could be helpful in this,
Because
because
we're starting to, we haven't spent too much time trying to parse that out.
Well, that's one of the questions to town council, is for them to define what's well, maybe you're asking a different question, but what's
think that's what I
commercial
was-
and what's considered residential.
correct. So did you look at parcels at all?
No,
We need to.
Oh, that's where we,
Laura?
It sounds like you're all getting a good process going and as I looked through this, I saw some things that maybe in the course of the LCD, you'll continue to discuss and review. Like minimum lot sizes and different dimensional constraints
Right.
than the underlying district and the density cap on acres, and I would want to make sure, and again, the LCD, I agree, is the easiest one to sort of tackle if you're talking about a potentially a development with more than 5 units or whatever. I'm just like pulling something out of the air, right? But like a larger unit, whatever that
a
means.
community of some.
A community,
Of some
okay.
number, right?
Of some number. Wanting to make sure that we're making it possible and
Right,
attractive to build a good community. It's also not unintentionally creating more sprawl.
right,
right,
Because that would be, I think we're trying to limit the footprint of these things, limit the environmental impact
Exactly.
and make them compact in size, which this starts to get at in terms of size of units. But, kind of compact in environmental impact and making it walkable for seniors too, and not making,
Right.
I think Bynum Circle is a fine model as a, kind of cottage style unit,
but it's not
Um,
walkable.
it's not walkable, it's not the kind of, maybe 2-story or 3-story kind of apartment units for
Right.
seniors who need a 1-bedroom or
Oh,
a
for sure.
studio.
No, we
There's
didn't,
lots of that market.
we're
even
not
if it's not
saying-
affordable with a capital A.
agreed, I think.
Mary?
Could I'd like to suggest that the planning board do a survey out to residents and say, focused on the senior housing bylaw and what residents, obviously we'd have to figure out the wording, but kind of, throw out different size units. What do they see as fitting into Manchester? Are they looking for, what are they looking?
Any of that in the master plan already?
Well, and again, the master plan data is from 2015, 2016. So I think it's time to refresh some of that. And I think, if we're looking at the senior housing bylaw right now, why not do a quick survey? The Hamilton Town Planner said it took them a few times to get it right. So I'm assuming it went to town meeting a few times. So maybe we can try to streamline it more with actually getting data and resident input, front load that as opposed to backloading it.
So you have a citizen approach and then you have a developer approach, sounds like. And
Well-
am I correct in saying you're gonna go by these 2x2s this week? And
No,
then
this week.
present on Friday?
No,
So
no,
what
no.
is Friday's meeting?
Friday's meeting is to come up with questions for the people we're gonna, and kind of come up with an interview protocol and figure out who we're gonna meet with. Came up with a short list, so,
Oh, I see.
and I think surveys are, we certainly can, in our subgroup, talk about survey.
I was gonna ask another question about the developer approach, which I think is helpful to get some sounding board on, how the math has to work from a square footage and number of units point of view and size. And I think it would be great if we could talk to some nonprofit developers, not just the for-profit ones, and see, if the profit motive is taken out of it, but you still need to be sustainable as a financial model, I think that can tell us a lot about right sizing it, and it might also tend towards a more lowercase a affordable as opposed to more luxury units, say.
Exactly.
do you have any suggestions?
I hear of, nonprofit developers around here, Harbor.
For humanity.
Habitat for Humanity, I think is more of a one-off, unit type, but Harbor, I think Chris probably knows some of these folks, and the Affordable Housing Trust, I would guess, has been working with some of them. I don't know them off the top of my head, but I know that they're out there.
Agreed.
And
I think
there are
also we'd love
like,
to see, if somebody has, taken, whether it's it doesn't have to be in Manchester, in Beverly, taken a 2-unit home and converted it with this, whatever their senior bylaw is, into 3 units or something simple, relatively simple. Or somebody has converted a single family home into 3 senior houses in another community. Understand how that happened and why, or where did it happen? Or did those bylaws result in that? You know, did they, maybe a few other towns to say, what did your bylaw result? Actually, what was the result of your bylaw? Because that's kind of you may think that we're creating an incentive, but it may not bear out. Because just because we zone it doesn't mean it'll get built. So the other, we also are cognizant of the increased density in some places in the MBTA district, and want to have that be sort of thought of before we say you have double the density or something. We talked a little bit about, that we need to think through what, I'm not saying we want double the density, but as a, for instance, we talked about a formula that would create a additional density, so.
Christina, Jacob.
So I did. So I guess my concern with the LCD is that, the master plan says to save some space for small scale commercial. So I think we need to make sure that we're not excluding that opportunity, because if we're allowing housing in the LCD, is that opening up a door to allow commercial other places? And Harbor Light is one of the few nonprofits that actually pays taxes. So if we do down that avenue, one of the downside would be lack of tax revenue, because most nonprofits are tax exempt. So getting their model is great. And like I said, Harbor Light actually did a great presentation in Gloucester a few months ago, and I might be able to dig up that, but there was quite a few examples from Salem and repurposing some older buildings. One was a church closer to the downtown that was geared towards, it was like maybe an old rectory or something that was senior housing. But my concern about housing in the LCD, we did go down this 40R. So maybe we need to pull that off the shelf, look at that zoning, because that was part of some grant money. I don't want to, make us, compliant with the 40A. That's, where you are. The
Oh.
grant money from the 40R that might be tied into the 40A. I think there's so many layers to this. We need to be careful of unintended consequences and.
I had some strict.
So I think that one of the things that we also have to be cognizant as we think about this is that there are unintended consequences with our status quo. Maybe not around senior housing, but around development or around, and you can't, it's hard to know, it's hard to look into the future.
So I know we have
So,
an option on the Cornerstone Church, right? So I mean, can we just start to like maybe pick some properties and see if they're viable?
Was an option.
The town.
Good idea.
Is that something the town's considering?
Well, they were considering it for a senior center.
Are they still considering that?
I mean, that's what I mean, like the option's still there. So I mean, no, I think they're using at the next door behind us for the senior center. So if the option's still
But the
there,
money is there to do that?
something to pursue.
So I think,
Can- That option expired on the Cornerstone Church, just a heads up.
Exactly. We have money in the Affordable Housing Trust. I mean, can we afford it? I mean, we can finance things. I mean, if we're trying to be creative and make housing,
See if they moved on.
so, I guess our purpose was trying to get a bylaw.
So,
And if we, maybe there are some possible sites, but we wanted bylaw that's kind of, so that might be a good, what if option for places like, there's only one Cornerstone Church, but pulling a few properties, or maybe, I was also taking some pictures of things that exist out there in other places. I don't know, we just really felt that we, needed to be able to answer more questions. So it's.
Laura, you had, yeah.
I was just gonna respond to the multifamily 15 units per acre, where there could be different models for multifamily housing than there might be for senior, if you're in the kind of apartment situation. I think it's going to be possibly, more units per acre than that, depending again on the size of the development, but it has to do with the program of the building and the size of the units and the, and the adjacency of the units, right? If it's people who are essentially in 1 or 2 bedroom units on a double loaded corridor, that's something different than a multifamily housing that has 2 units or 3 units. Right. So we should just be particular to the kinds of, and if Harbor Lights, I think a nonprofit development is still a great model because it's if Harbor Lights pays taxes, that's great. Can be a great model for people who are looking in those developments. And if we can get some examples of kind of, benchmark.
Yeah.
How big, how many units?
Yeah, I think
What's
we
the underlying
wanted to see
zoning
what is the possible, rather than what we tend to go to is, oh, people wouldn't want that. And I think we want to see what's the opportunity in an affirmative way. So I guess that's, and we felt we didn't have I don't feel like I have the planning, the background in, particularly in this particular need. But we recognize there's some urgency. So, because right now, I think meeting any senior housing need in Manchester is gonna come largely from the private sector right now. I think the nonprofit, the public sector is gonna be focused on the big A affordable housing or town needs. That's my hypothesis, but I could be wrong. So anyway, that's where we're at.
Yeah, it sounds like you guys are advocating to remove, take this off special town meeting and continue to meet and move it forward with the subcommittee.
Yeah.
I know Chris is not here to vote, but I'd like to get consensus from the board that we would like to, we're not ready for this, and that we will just not bring this up to special town meeting if there is.
Can I just add, I don't object to that. The other piece of this is Betsy and Gail and I went around about if we were to post, basically, in order to meet the deadlines, we would probably need to post something tomorrow for a public hearing for this topic. Because, yeah, I know, so we have not advanced, well, we have the draft language that has been floating around, and it seems like that's got,
correct me if I'm wrong, board, but I don't
Yeah.
think we're ready to move
No, I
this
don't think
forward.
so,
Does anybody
I agree.
disagree? Okay. And so this is similar to the next item, which would be the language of table of uses. I don't think this is still in flux. I think we're waiting for some town council on the discriminatory nature of the language.
We got,
For the ADUs?
Yeah.
it's not an ADU.
No, for the, table of uses, yeah, the ADUs,
It's not an ADU, but
allowing,
The family member.
family member
Right.
to live as opposed to employee. And I think there was some nature of discriminatory, language, so don't know if Betsy's not here, if town council responded or not to that question. I think they did and said they cautioned us.
Yeah, we have the email.
Okay.
It seems like we would have to decide either to change our definition or change what we're proposing to make it work. That was my quick take.
he says, I do not suggest any amendments to the definition.
So again, this is somewhat to deal with some density. I'm thinking we're not ready for this and it's something we can, there's no urgency here. We can push this off till spring.
Well, what he's saying is that the familial connection would raise a fair housing concern. So, it prohibits discrimination of the rental or sale based on a familial status and provides it shall be unlawful. So I think,
I believe, Sarah and the ZBA were asking us to add another word in addition to employee, and the suggestion was family. So family is discriminatory. I think we really want to back off that and not use it. That's not
Right.
our intent.
Right.
Can we just strike the word employee
That's what's-
and accomplish the same thing? Have we asked could we ask the lawyer that? Otherwise, we're not changing the use or anything else
Right.
about that law. We're just striking employee.
So
Mary.
I think what that's opening up, which is different than what's been discussed and would perhaps have some pushback, is then it's just saying that you can have a detached ADU. And that's different than what we currently have, whether you change language or not. So now it's saying you can permit a detached ADU. So that's just something that, so if the town wants to have that, that's what this is now saying.
So I guess that's a good, I think that's actually a good idea to pursue, and I've thought a little bit about this, and if I make an ADU for my mother-in-law or an employee, and then or my son, and then, or an employee, just some, I don't have a gardener, my gardener, or somebody who takes care of my kids, a nanny. And then my kids grow up and the nanny continues to live there, but is no longer employed, but is the same person. Now is not a family member and is not an employee. How is that detrimental to the neighbors or the town if that same exact person has lived there as a nanny and then as a non-nanny? So that would argue that if we were okay with employee housing in a carriage unit, then we should be okay with a employee who becomes a non-employee. Essentially, a person who becomes.
Well, in my thinking about, regardless of the specific person is,
Yeah.
it seems like we're giving a privilege to someone who can employ
Employ
someone,
somebody, right.
can live on their property, as opposed to anyone else who's not in that position.
Right,
So what if we just cut that qualitative word? And then we haven't changed the bylaw except to say it's not in regards to employees, and it's a workaround right now anyhow. People are,
and it
Going
helps us
further.
with senior housing a little bit.
yes.
So why don't we just, then we only need one ADU bylaw. We should combine our ADU bylaw that says you can have it within the house or you can have it detached, because that's what this is. It's a nice scenario that you give, but that's not what probably 90% of the scenarios would be. It will be people renting out their units above their garages, or both their house and the garages, or whatever it is. I'm not saying that's right or wrong. I'm saying that's what will happen. So I don't know that the current employee bylaw has the requirements that our current ADU bylaw has. So I think we need to look at that, because people will just circumvent our current ADU bylaw and say, for any detached, I can do anything because we have the separate bylaw now that's different than our ADU bylaw. So I don't think it's as simple as just having a detached unit that could be very different than what we require for our ADU bylaw.
Should we roll this up when we discuss the ADU bylaw?
Well, then we get into the constructive, whatever the majority approval of, and the ADU bylaw has a whole bunch of other issues around, double lots and buildings that existed prior to 1984. So I think that I think there is a comprehensive piece, but we can't seem to get agreement on the ADU bylaw. I think Laura makes an interesting argument to have, to do this. But I also think we want to have it be available for, we're not trying to do the Airbnb piece. I think that's the concern. We really want it to be housing for people who live here, not ADU, not, Airbnbs, at least that's my,
I think most people agree with that.
so maybe there's a way to.
Put some guardrails.
Put a guardrail for rental, for, residential, or, you know, exclude it for use other than excluding,
You don't want
the
the
short-term
short-term
rentals.
rentals. You don't want the
Yeah.
short-term.
Is this part of your subcommittee task, this item, is this?
no, it's
No.
not. We got enough going on. But I think that there might be a very easy guardrail that we could put in, maybe we could ask council for. So I think Laura's making a really interesting point. We've been batting this around. We know it's a ZBA problem. And it does give us a little bit of progress on the housing, and it would give us an opportunity, if there were a town meeting, which there might not be. An opportunity to ask the town how they feel about.
Striking the word.
No, about the essentially allowing. A type of ADU.
Well, by doing that, you're striking the word. employee.
Yeah, take the word employee, and I would say put a guardrail for,
Anybody know what?
I would like to
bylaw
run
this is?
that by Sarah Mellish.
it is it's table 4.2, section number.
13. No,
We don't have any, but we used to have descriptions.
My file, it's in table 4.2, it's the language in the proposed bylaw.
Oh,
Yeah.
it's on the,
Yeah.
second page of the email. That Betsy
Yeah, two or,
sent to Jonathan, how it presently reads.
Oh, yeah, I'm just looking for what the bylaw number is.
it's the table 4.2,
4.2,
note
number 7.
13 or whatever.
Oh,
the
no,
note-
13.
That's where it is.
Um. So, yeah, I mean, we don't need to spend much time on it tonight, but obviously this is vastly different than our accessory dwelling unit bylaw, and because this one has no size limit, it has, an accessory structure that would have different setback requirements.
It's an existing, these are existing garage, stable, or other existing structure.
Right, but again, it has no definition of existing, so I could build it one month and go to ZBA the next month and say, I have an existing garage that I want to do A, B, or C with. I'm just,
I'm wondering if this opens us up.
of course it does, so that's why it's gotta be more defined.
So what does it open us up to? More housing, if we put guardrails around short-term rentals.
Well, Airbnb, what about this Airbnb?
That's
Well,
short-term
that's short-term
rentals.
rent.
So each new housing unit that you're gonna create like this is going to put us back on our affordable housing list. So unless we get our hands around some kind of affordability, we have the 48 coming at us and we're already 100 units behind.
So that's an argument for never doing anything to increase density.
No, it's an
That's-
argument for, it's going to, we have limited resources. We have limited land and limited resources. So if we're always gonna be under the threat of a 40B, then we need to attack the affordability portion, not just create more housing. So we can have people deed restrict those, and that would be an affordable unit. So we need to maybe offer some incentives, maybe use some affordable housing trust money and give them one-time payments to deed restrict some of these places. No, I mean, we can't just keep letting people build housing without addressing the affordable issue.
Deed restrict is a good idea, so we could deed restrict for affordable or deed restrict for senior housing, which is what we're saying we're looking for.
So that people have approached other, property owners with some of these places, and if property owners would like to deed restrict a carriage house, then that could be a solution, but just increasing housing without addressing the affordable issue, we're just going down the path without a plan.
Laura.
We've been increasing housing for decades. We have no controls over single family housing subdivision. So I think the housing increase that's what got us to where we are today. So I think we're talking about something separate. We do need to look at affordable housing, but I think we don't stop considering our other housing needs that are smaller in scale. And we have this already on the books. I think I'm just saying, let's not define some particular population that what percentage of the people in town can afford to hire an employee to live on their property? Like, it's pretty specific now. And if we're trying to be anti-discriminatory about it, should we not make it the same rule for everybody?
So could we get a handle on the data before we go change or adjusting things? Could we understand how many of these we have?
No, we don't have,
So-
how do we know, and what difference does it make? What is the how does the knowing the number change?
Because Laura was just making the comment that, you know, people aren't like, you know, having these for hiring people anymore, right? Or there's not that many, or, you know, so I'm just, let's get a handle on how many existing garages we have.
That would require a door-to-door search by somebody to go to every house and look into it, because otherwise the data is not available.
So I guess
Somebody like,
it would be important to be able to understand how many living quarters, which are in essence have gone through a special permit, have gone through this. So we would know by the special permit process.
Well, actually, we know that I feel like it's like
You
5 in the last.
yeah, there wasn't
4
that many
years.
that you pulled, right? There
Right.
wasn't,
So that begs the question, why are we changing the bylaw for 5
That's
workarounds?
employee, that was the employee,
Sarah,
so,
Sarah Mellish
Sarah Melish gave,
was,
so 5 with the employee housing, and we believe that some of those were for family members. So, I don't think,
it's sort of watered down now because people get around this employee thing by just saying, you know, I hired my mother, you know, to cook once a week. My employee.
I'm gonna make a motion that we post a public hearing, because that will give an opportunity for us to hear from the public. To change note 13 of table 4.2. And strike the word
People do that,
yeah,
can
to address this by taking out employee and adding in a provision for prohibiting short-term paying guests. So
I mean, the definition of short-term paying guest is less than 6 nights, so then you have someone in there for a week, and so now they're not short-term, but it's still Airbnb. So there's a lot of issues with the definition in our town. So short-term, I don't think solves the problem.
so let's act on the motion.
yeah, my point is to intend to just at least have a public hearing, so we can kind of think through the issues with the public. That's my point, as opposed to, you know, it's an interesting idea. It's a fairly narrow issue. Despite the fact that we can, we've already come up with some issue, and that it gives us a small, progress, I think, toward some of the goals. So the motion would be to put it to a public hearing without trying to wordsmith the.
Your second on the motion. Discussion.
I think I guess the other piece is a public hearing doesn't obligate us to put it on the warrant. It's just an opportunity to hear from the public and think through it. Laura?
Would it be helpful to have someone from the ZBA who's had firsthand experience join us for that public hearing?
I was, to that point, I was gonna just write Sarah Mellish on the proposal of what we're thinking of doing.
Yeah.
And just getting her opinion, but she could definitely be, either write something to us or, correct. was my thought. The issue I have is when do you wanna think
Yeah, I
you
was
wanna
looking
do
at that.
this, because just, don't wanna jump ahead too much, but next meeting, we have primer on floodplain and
And we
cell
can't,
signaling is
we
coming.
don't have enough time to post it for next meeting. It'd have to be. Because it
It
needs,
won't be until October or
Right.
November, and
I was gonna suggest October 9th. That's
we need 3 weeks.
yeah, that's 3 weeks.
Columbus Day.
That's Columbus Day. So October 10th would be our meeting. And
So that's the day we're supposed to get the application in from cell signaling.
okay.
So I don't know how much we're gonna get tied up, going forward with that and the MBTA, but go ahead, Laura.
I was gonna say, it's probably not as urgent as some of these other things that are coming forth sometime this year, and maybe we also put the question in the meantime to council. And say we like to strike employee and we wanna put some guardrails on around rental terms.
And now try to do it for. Well,
Well, we're not having a fall town meeting. I mean, if we're having a fall town meeting, senior housing's not on it. This one thing doesn't seem like the reason to have the one fall town meeting.
No, we wouldn't have the fall town meeting, but if there were other items on the fall town meeting.
I guess we'll just see where we are. I
Yeah.
mean, we've been working on this thing for so long. I hate to put the cart before the horse in terms of a lot of other things on our plate, but
All right, so then add, maybe withdraw the motion to say, have a.
sometime this fall.
Sometime this fall and ask council for some language first. Then we have a public hearing sometime this fall and then at least hash it out in public, and I think that's,
Well, in the meantime, I like Laura's idea of bringing it up to town council and to Sarah. And
right,
so I will pursue with Sarah
okay.
and town council. And could you specifically tell me, just strike the word, can you write to me what it's thinking?
Okay, there's a clause here to be occupied only by an employee of the owner occupant. So I guess we would strike that clause. Family living quarters for, I don't know if you can say family, that would be a question for
Just family living quarters.
family living quarters, maybe that's fine. To be occupied only by an employee of the owner occupant. So
I
we
mean,
would say,
You could also say family living quarters for long-term rental, 6 months or more. Something like that.
maybe you could just say family living quarters of the dwelling while such garage, da da da
Yeah.
da da. And then we need to add a clause
About,
specifically defining, I don't know if the definition's here, but the limit, the guardrails
The
that
term,
Sue's talking
right,
about.
the time,
Could
time
that-
term.
could somebody write that clause?
Yeah.
So we can move that forward.
I think there's language in the close to 80s.
That's a bit we can agree on. Okay.
All right, so we won't try to do it in October necessarily, but
Christina,
So just, when you said town council, it made me think of that. Do we have like an unlimited budget for town council?
no, the town, that's a good point.
I mean, just based on Betsy's memo, just,
So town council, we have to vote that we want to send something to town council, and then I have to fill out a form that goes to the select board that, okay, you can spend the money to town council. Now, Betsy has been under her own jurisdiction, sending our questions to town council on behalf of the town. So I haven't had to fill out any forms, but without her being here tonight, she might do that on her own, but if we want to do it, I have to get everyone to say, yes, we want to do it, and then I'll have to fill out this form and send it up the line.
I guess, I mean, that's just not the point. I guess the point is, do we have a budget? Do we have what tally where we are? I mean,
That would be up to them. I don't know what the budget is. I can talk to Greg about it.
that would be good information. I just feel like we're at the beginning of the year, we have MBTA zoning, we have a lot of, not that this isn't important, I just, based on Betsy's memo, I just want to be mindful of.
maybe we can, on this issue, we actually have council, okay, this is in response to council. And then it's really a simple question of how do we make it around rentals? Perhaps when Betsy or somebody else is talking to council on other matters, she could slip this in and say how to, I mean, or for the moment, for the purposes of just getting the conversation going, and then obviously when you write a final, it has to be reviewed by council, a final rule bylaw, but
If that doesn't happen, does the board have any objections for
I think
moving this forward to town council? On our
I
behalf?
personally think we need a lot more work to be done. I think this was just come up tonight. I think we could go off, look at other communities, see what they look like before we just send it
So,
to town council.
I think we have some kind of steps that we're gonna take, and then we'll talk about it again.
Yeah.
And make it a process going forward. I'll hear any objections. If Betsy doesn't slip it in, I will move forward with the question. Okay, and the last.
Anybody second that motion? Do we have to
no, I withdraw it.
Through it. So. Lastly, floodplain bylaw, we're not. So Eric Carlson from DCR will be coming to our next meeting to give us a primer. Also, I believe the Board of Health will be at our meeting. They had some questions. So I think we're gonna, as the board requested, try to get a primer on this floodplain bylaw and what it's about. So with the primer just coming in 2 weeks, I do not believe we're ready to even think about, crafting a floodplain bylaw for November. Is there any objection to that?
No, but I think it's good that we're educating ourselves on this.
Right, okay, so it looks like, if I'm not mistaken, we're not gonna push anything forward to the special town meeting. In that statement. All right, thank you. Cell signaling technologies update, so informally, Mark Lusky asked to come in for an informal meeting to brief us on what's going on, with the idea of them filing their formal application next month. So, Mark will be out of the country, but his people will be here next meeting, in addition with Eric Carlson's group. So we have jam-packed meeting. The question I'm asking the board is, town asked us, I gotta get back to these people, moving our meeting from Monday, September 25th to Tuesday, September 26th, due to a religious holiday on the 25th.
I can't come to it.
26 is difficult for me too.
I just reached out to you specifically about that.
So that's why I told Betsy not to move forward with this until I polled you guys, so I don't have an objection for the 25th. Does anyone? I know you're not gonna be around.
Yeah.
So as far as the board goes, we would like to keep it on Monday, the 25th, and that's, can I just have a show of hands for the 25th?
I would like to just, I read the email with Greg and I understand that, but I feel like this is 2 weeks before the meeting. So, select board needs to send out a memo, a policy. We just can't. The state's been on the books and
Yeah, no, I
he
hear
needs
you.
to send that, starting January 21st, 2024, some new policy, but I agree. But, and I feel like we should be setting the schedules a year in advance, and
Yeah, it
this is,
came up unbeknownst to me, and I tried to put the brakes on it, and that's.
We met last year on the date.
Scheduling everyone to the next day, and I said, hold it, let me poll the board first, so. So Gail will try to move it, keep it on the 25th, still with us.
Yes, I'm here.
Oh, I see Greg's on, so, yeah. Greg, we'd like to keep it on the 25th, is that a problem?
Well, I would just say you would never do that on Christmas Day or Easter Day, and it's equivalent. So I would urge you to reconsider that decision.
Is it a town holiday?
It is not a town holiday now.
think the 25th.
I don't,
Greg, we have several members who say they can't make that date. So, I mean, the quorum would be in question.
No, I understand. There may be another date during the week, perhaps.
Well, that would require me to go back. Okay, so there'd be some logistics because of cell signaling and yeah, Eric Carlson. So would the board consider another date during that week?
I'm gonna be out of town starting Wednesday.
I
And Laura, you're out
specifically,
that whole week too.
I have a lot going on that week. That's why I specifically sent that email. So it's just unfortunate. We met on Yom Kippur last year. I sent this email to request this. Craig, I am completely sympathetic. I completely understand where you're going, but I don't feel like it's fair. The planning board met on this date, this holiday last year and the year before. So if you are willing and wanting to make this policy, I feel like it needs to come from the top down at a date certain, not 2 weeks before people have already made plans.
It's not a state holiday, it's not a federal holiday. I definitely respect the holiday, but I mean, I work for state government and
The
it's a work
school-
day.
The school open on the,
Schools are open.
so
I mean, the only other option is just skip that meeting. Look at your
But I
face.
guess if this board doesn't have, like, who has the, Greg?
I know, well, it doesn't sound like Tuesday is an option or the rest of the week.
If this board had a problem with it and people spoke up a month ago, 6 weeks ago, and it wasn't published 2 weeks on the agendas, it is what it is, but unfortunately. I don't think we can.
October 2nd.
I mean, we're not deciding anything.
What about
We're
pushing to
concerned about
October
the-
2nd?
Excuse me?
What about pushing to October 2nd? Just push it out a week. Meet the 2nd and the,
So then we're conflicting with
But then we have Columbus Day that next week, which we're gonna.
the
have
board of
to meet
selectmen. Yeah. And this is what, self-signaling, right? So
So
no.
I would need to talk to so self-signaling wants to file on the October 9th
I
meeting.
feel like we've already voted.
So there would be a lot of logistic changes to move this right now.
October 9th is Columbus Day.
yeah.
I think
It
we
is
are
the 9th?
closed that day.
October 9th is Columbus Day, so we have to meet on the 10th as it is.
I got that wrong. Okay.
I will not be here on the 10th, but I can, I can't.
So you're suggesting canceling the meeting in 2 weeks and doing everything on the 10th of October?
No,
Is that
I'm
what you're
not, I'm not actually.
No, I'm just saying that, we either meet the 25th or I don't know what. It sounds like nobody can meet the rest of the week. I'm fine with the 25th, but it's up to the majority.
So let me do this. Let me tell both applicants, both people that are coming in that we want to hold the 25th. Let me see if there's any pushback on that.
Did the applicant have a concern about the 25th?
No. Not that.
It's
not-
an
no.
informal, and it's also an informal presentation
Right,
of
it's
the,
informal. They don't have, I don't think they have an objection to either. I know Eric Carlson was open for either date, so the DCR had no.
So like I said, again, I am sympathetic, but we've met on this date last year. It's 2 weeks ahead of time trying to change a schedule that's been on the books for the beginning of the year. So I don't understand why we're actually trying to change it.
because we're trying to be respectful of.
For this year versus the last 2 years?
All right, let's go back to the 25th. I'd rather have the board here than just, 2 or 3 people, and you all need to hear this, so it's important that people make it, so. I don't know anything about Chris's schedule, but I assume you'll be back by the 25th.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. MBTA Communities Multi Task Force. That last week.
Yep, we did. We adopted the communication plan, prepared by Tiffany. And we're working on drafting, something to go in the newsletter that I guess is enclosed with the quarterly tax bills. Since I never post, I will now though, not the tax bill, I read the tax bill. I wasn't familiar with what got included in that, but Betsy did a first draft of something, just sort of an introduction because it's really a very small section of our community that sort of knows this issue is even out there. And we're just trying to get people up to speed that here's this law, this is where we stand, this is our plan. You know, you're gonna hear about it to vote at town meeting next year. Just that's a very simplistic view, but we're just trying to do a introductory communication to be included in that newsletter. And then Tiffany's working on a schedule with public forums and you know, lots of workshops, discussion opportunities. So that was our subcommittee on communication and outreach. We also decided to include the business community in our outreach, even though that it's not completely made up of voters, but they're all very interested in this. I think that's sort of the highlight.
What about the hiring of consultants and where does that stand and
So-
why aren't any, shouldn't that?
Yeah,
take place by now?
we are anxious about that. I guess we're still waiting for the terms of service of the consultant to be finalized, which Betsy is working on.
So Betsy hasn't even issued their contract yet, is that
I
kind of?
think that's right, yeah.
So I thought the planning board was gonna be involved with the hiring of the consultant,
I think that's up to the task force
up to the task force.
on the consultants. Yeah. It's in their hands.
We also now have a subcommittee to work on data and trying to figure out the parcels in the districts. Again, that's maybe the simplistic overview, but
Who's spearheading that?
let's see. I
You gotta
wasn't
get, you gotta
prepared.
get people responsible and to move forward with this stuff, because.
So I'm not sure, what does that mean? I thought, is that what Betsy was working on, that we were supposed to have data like 6 months ago, 6 weeks ago? Like, where is that data?
Anything that she's been working on, I think, is available on the website, but I'm not sure what you're specifically referring to, what she was working on.
Betsy, 3 months ago, said she was gonna have information and data for us by the end of the week.
On what?
Parcels, units, how many we had of this and that.
I think she is still working with the assessor on that, which is why I think some people were anxious to get moving on that. So there is a group of, I'm sorry, I thought Chris was gonna be here, so I wasn't prepared
Yeah.
to speak
that's-
about the details of the meeting.
Okay, I just, as an observer, is just that I think. If they want to present this for Springtown meeting.
Oh, I don't think it's going to be presented for
One of the
Springtown.
select board members thought that at their meeting last, that it was gonna be presented in the spring.
I don't know where they got that.
So I
Well,
think
that
the
was
idea
thought,
is,
but in any case, there's gotta be some urgency with task force to meet a little more regularly, I would think, just from an.
Well, we're meeting every other week and the subcommittees meet pretty much every week.
Okay.
So
I think
just
it's hard to
just
ask
that-
people to meet during every other week in the summer.
Well, we
It's
did
it's-
start.
Yeah, no, but
Yeah.
yeah, so I think it's.
We met 2 weeks in August.
So this Tiffany's gonna provide this, she's gonna back out from November, a schedule.
Yeah,
Is that-
she's working on that.
So the timeline says that there's gonna be an April 2024 vote. So I
Yeah.
think that's where you're getting it
Which timeline?
on the website.
Well,
So we need to correct, I mean, if that's not the case.
Yeah, that was the communication plan, and the idea was it needed to go to the spring town meeting, because if it didn't pass, then you had a second option. So I'm not sure what the subcommittee is, but we are ultimately responsible for this, so I think the communication and this task force needs to come meet with us and get this hashed out, because the expectations, I'm not sure we're all on the same page here.
I'm not sure that we are responsible. I mean, the task force was charged with coming up with a zoning, so I think that's what they're working on, and we need to have some. I think that everybody understands that there's urgency. I think we have to let them kind of
Yeah, and I
Do their work, yeah.
need to pick on you.
do that.
I didn't, I just wish I had been more prepared to give
Instead
the
of having the
details
whole
of the
task
meeting.
force here, maybe
Right.
we have Gar and
Maybe we
Chris
should have Gar and Chris
to
come
come in
each time,
and
yeah.
talk about the urgency.
Cause I could have asked
Rather
Gar
than-
to come if I know
Yeah,
Chris was.
so,
Yeah.
So I would like to make a recommendation that the task force puts into their timeline that the planning board gets the information on X date before any potential town meeting, because the planning board is going to have time to review the documents, the data, discuss as a planning board, have the public forums, do all of that. So we need probably at least a couple months.
Well, you know that it takes, 6 weeks at least to have a public hearing on zoning and get a draft. And
So that's why I'm saying
Oh,
that,
more than one, it might be.
Yeah.
you know, if this is true, April 2024, the planning board would want all of this by like
But I think
end of
that
February.
what Sue's saying is it's unlikely that it's gonna have, they're not working to an April. You're not working to an April 2024 deadline,
That's
regardless.
That's
I don't
I'm
know
not
unreal.
sure
where
who
that's-
put that on the
Yeah,
website.
that's unreal. It's probably an old.
Yeah.
This is an updated one. No, because the old one had it, we already had the data and the planning board were pretty much doing public forums by now. So this is an
That would
updated
be
one.
nice. I wish we were.
Could
Maybe
you
get
go
a
back to
timeline.
the fair task force and on the date thing and get with Tiffany on what these dates.
I will ask Chris and Gar to straighten that
All
out.
right. Or at least ask them, that's.
Yeah.
Perfect.
So Ron, could I ask you a question? Sorry. I listened to a bit of the meeting remotely and,
Task force meeting.
so one thing that I heard was that Betsy was giving information to the task force. I would like to request that information that's given to the task force is also, the planning board is also CC'd, so we can stay abreast of that same information. And get a package, maybe and catch us up.
I would say pass that on to Chris and Gar.
Okay, that's reasonable.
I would pass along the request to
Thank
Chris and Gar.
Understood.
I would not
Not
agree to
holding you-
provide it.
not holding you account. Okay, anything else on the MBTA business? On the liaison, senior housing, we talked about Harbor Management Plan Advisory Group. Sarah, any update for the group?
The harbor management planning group met with someone from Urban Harbors, which is a group at UMass Boston who has done many harbor management plans to understand what a harbor management plan is. And it turns out it's whatever we want it to be. The jurisdiction includes generally harbors and the lands along, or coastline, the lands along coastline, including chapter 91 lands. And then there was also a woman from the DEP who explained that there are opportunities to have a state-approved harbor management plan that, and if you have a state-approved harbor management plan, which is a complicated and more arduous process, you are able to then use that tool to make up to some very defined modifications to chapter 91. To that make, so for example, you could require increased setbacks from water bodies. For example, I believe that was one of them, there were requirements about local, and chapter 91, as we touched on with the Crockers and the Crocker Boatyard and the Manchester Marine applications, is a state law that governs, that is primarily primary purpose is to ensure public access to coastal waters. That's its primary purpose. And apparently it's a highly complex law, of course, everything is. And so one of the things that I think the Harbor Management Task Force wants to do is to get a update or primer on chapter 91, so we know what it is. And so I think that would be very useful to the planning board as well. So as that evolves, you know, it's an important piece. I think the Harbor Management Committee felt that we should pursue first the local plan, and then you can transition to a state approved plan, given that we don't even know what the planning issues we're trying to address are, although we went around the room and talked about harbor congestion, public access, commercial fishermen, shellfish bits closed, climate change, and then the other thing that we're still wrestling with is, and if you do a state approved plan, has to be from basically Chubb Island, which is the Beverly Farms border, to Magnolia, which is an enormous coastline. And we think of the harbor as, you know, what's right out here. So there's a lot to this. But I think we're off to a good start with a good group that has a lot of experience doing this, who can guide us, and more to come.
Okay, thank you. Any questions, Laura?
Yeah, I did, reading through the facilities master plan that DPW was just completed with their
Right.
consultant. They made a brief reference to the harbor headquarters, harbor master headquarters, and potential for public restroom, other so, you know, kind of access to the waterfront, but some public amenities there. And in the report, it said that the harbor master at least was confident that 80% of the funds could be procured from grants, like not really part of the capital plan, and so therefore was not further evaluated in the facilities report. Is it part of the harbor master plan? And if it isn't, maybe should it be? Because if it's not going to be considered as really a town facility with the potential for funding, then it seems like it's integral to that.
We did not discuss that. I will tell you that my personal opinion is that it should be, and one of the, I think, this is my opinion, not the opinion of the harbor themselves. But that to me, there's a conflict between one of the values that we did talk about in the harbor management, just going around, not, you know, were the sort of quintessential view corridors. And it is, and I think that the proposed location for it is certainly squarely in chapter 91.
Sure. Oh, more reason to put it in your chapter 91
Right.
overview.
So that is my opinion. It hasn't been discussed one way or the other by the group. So.
Any other questions on the harbor? You? CPC met on August 24th. We went over the status of ongoing projects. Just for the board's information, the Chowder House is being re-roofed. They just stripped it today.
I know, looks great.
It should be done this week. A new red roof.
Oh, no.
Our next meeting is 9/28, which is a public hearing that we're obliged to have.
Is well, the roof was black before, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So they're making it
It's gonna be
consistent
red
with
to
the
match
rotunda and
surround,
yeah.
Should be looking
I
nice.
looked at it, I was like, was it red before?
It's gonna be red. They put,
They-
I know they just had the underlayment last time I looked, but.
I think
maybe they
it's
started
putting,
shingling it
yeah.
already.
I think so.
Okay, okay. Okay, any other liaison reports? From any of our liaisons?
I think FinCom's meeting this Thursday, they haven't met, and, I can't go on Thursday, so. I can ask.
I have one possible, let me look at my emails that came in.
Anyone look at the 8:28 minutes? So they were in the packet. Gail did them from the film. From the
Oh.
tape. Yes, no,
I looked on Friday, it wasn't there. I guess this is becoming an ongoing issue. Like, we asked for them on Thursday, we get them on Saturday, we got Betsy's report today, like. It's not professional. I don't understand why we can't have the sufficient amount of time to do our jobs.
okay,
Well,
you had a question?
all I was gonna say is I was not present at that meeting, so I saw that it was in the packet and I do not need to opine on it.
I think maybe we can just take a moment and get them done. We've got time. I think they're fine.
Motion to approve the
I'll
minutes.
take a motion to approve the minutes of August 28th.
Second,
All those in favor?
I didn't.
You are here. Oh, you agree. And so that's,
Three. 3 and 2 abstains.
But you could talk to Greg potentially about making sure that we get these things by our deadlines. That would be great. Thank you.
just,
Also the minutes of May 15th, and actually 4 of us were there. I put them in just now. They're very simple. I can even read them aloud if you want.
I did read them.
I read those too.
so Flora, may I have a question?
Yeah,
So subcommittee minutes have to be approved by the committee?
no,
Oh,
it's just
okay.
by the
Okay, got
subcommittee.
it.
That subcommittee is
Got it.
not meeting again,
Got it.
so it would be
Okay, got
the
it.
subcommittee. So I'm gonna make a motion to approve the subcommittee meeting of May 15th. And so it would be Christina, Mary, Ron, and I that could vote for that. So all in favor? Aye. Okay, Gail, those are in the packet for tonight. So can you get those posted and remove the word draft from them?
Sure.
Excellent, thank you.
and Christina, you got my message today that 4 meeting minutes on rules and regulations are missing. They haven't been submitted.
I didn't get them.
So
We never
this
met again to
May,
approve them.
if you didn't, if they were canceled, we need to know. So May 17, 25, 31, and June 15 all came back from town.
They're all posted.
The posted meeting, so we need the minutes. That were.
Well, we need information.
Okay, she needs information.
Can you approve minutes if the subcommittee hasn't met again?
We just did that right here. You can just do it in a public meeting
Okay.
here.
I don't think we met. I think that's where all the missed postings.
Oh, yeah, might have been canceled. I could look at the dates.
Some of them were.
I don't know.
So just give them the information. If it was canceled, let them know so they don't keep counting.
So do these, where does the senior housing bylaw
They
subcommittee?
go with the
meet?
agenda. If you look on the agenda, there's
No,
a,
no, but where are they posting them in SharePoint?
Gail, where do these minutes get posted, or are they just posted on the
Well-
meeting?
For like the meetings, minutes that we do now, for the senior housing bylaw subcommittee.
They're posted on the website. All meeting minutes are posted on the town website.
Okay,
But
so I'm just wondering where they are in SharePoint. Do we have folders for those or?
we haven't,
No, I don't put them in SharePoint. They're all posted on the town website.
we can just put them in the meeting packet. Like,
But do you have a sub?
They are in the meeting packet. Meeting minutes are in the meeting packets.
so we have,
Should we have a file for your stuff?
probably, I can create one. That's not hard.
But it sounds
Okay.
complicated.
It's not hard. I can
Create
create
a
one.
file.
I didn't get anything for you today.
Excuse me,
I didn't get anything from you today.
from me?
It was
said you
from,
sent
Ga-
me-
it was from Gail, the message. was
No,
from
no,
Gail.
I've
Oh, you,
forwarded something.
Oh.
I'll resend it. Maybe I didn't go to your right address. Other matter, senior housing subcommittee, we talked about that. Recodification process, other matters. You had mentioned something about having a recodification process kind of made, correct?
Yeah, was that on tonight's agenda?
No, but I just wanted you to just brief the board and see if we want to move forward with this and
Well,
put it on the agenda.
I don't know if it becomes a board decision, but I obviously wasn't prepared for it because it wasn't on the agenda, but. Yeah. So, through a public records request, I was made aware of an issue that happened during the recodification process. That the master bylaw documents were not on the town website and a planning board member was making changes unauthorized. I also spoke to the interim town planner for about an hour and a half on this issue. And it's very concerning to me because I was told that the town planner at the time did not have direct access to these. Mark Bobrowski did not have direct access to these. Us who lived through this recodification process, were constantly trying to ask for the bylaws that had track changes, what was being changed, give us a summary. It was always like, oh, well, you know, it just had to peck and figure it out. Well, so my overall concern is that a board member or a couple board members cannot do that. They cannot have documents that they have access to that they change. And then they're not track change. And, you know, we paid Mark Bobrowski $50,000 to kind of be the keeper of these bylaws. We had a town planner at the time, and come to find out that they were as much in the dark as other planning board members. So that process is very concerning to me. I've spoken to the state. So I think as a planning board, we need to understand what the issue is and was, so that it doesn't happen again.
Maybe we could password protect these documents, but okay, let's talk about a process.
Well, I mean, obviously you're talking about me.
I
I
wasn't gonna, yes, but it is.
fine. I worked really hard on the codification. The town planner at the time did not help. And I did my very best to be transparent with putting the documents every single week up on the website. I didn't change anything intentionally, maybe an error, but anything that wasn't authorized by this board. And I gave you all a weekly memo. So I apologize if I didn't follow some process, but it was entirely as transparent as I possibly could make it. And I'm quite offended that this is how it's coming out. I think to go to the Attorney General or something is quite offending.
Well, I did reach out
I-
to you a couple times and you didn't respond. And I'm sure you thought you were doing a good process. Again, I felt very, hands were tied behind my back because I did not have track change documents. Things were changing constantly. I kept asking for, again, the draft line, the track change versions. We would talk about one item, we wouldn't talk about it again for a few months, and then by the time we talked about it again, the document had changed and there was no track changes. So this is a call to have better processes in place so that this doesn't happen to current planning board members and it doesn't happen to residents. That was part of the issue at town meeting, where there was not the track change documents that people could follow. So I'm trying to right the ship here. And
There were a lot of track change documents.
There were a
I
lot.
mean, you could go back
Yeah,
years.
Years,
I
right.
mean, you know.
So-
But it's.
I think
don't know what the value.
maybe
but
we can just, okay, I'm sorry, but maybe we can just agree that we'll talk about what the process is gonna be going forward and not try to criticize the past, those in terms of at least implying intent there was no malintent.
I am not implying intent. This is what the emails that
But if.
I have spelled out. So it is not me accusing anybody of anything. It is me saying, this is what happened. I can finally understand why it was the situation that it was, and we don't want to do it again. So I think it does merit having good processes in place. Who's the keeper of documents, and whether that's password protected or whatever that is, and that.
Yeah, I think
Having a town,
we had a town planner change and, we were trying to move forward with this, so a lot of things were in play, but understood, so we can, not that we're gonna be recodifying anything for soon, I think we're done, but. we
Well,
should
within
have-
a bylaw.
Within-
the other thing, can I just say that, I mean, when I came on the board, there was absolutely no article proposed. It was like this whole big document, and I tried to break it down into manageable chunks. And,
No, you did a lot of work.
that was the intention, and I think we succeeded in delivering something. I don't think there's anything that you couldn't, that was done in secret or anything. So I think,
Yeah, no.
so
no,
I think
with
there
any
are plenty of
amount
track changes documents that were put forward, and maybe not every single one was track changes if it was administrative, but we did not change anything that wasn't with the board's approval. I didn't change anything that was one. So anyway, sorry that,
I appreciate the work you did, I'm just.
I think Betsy didn't ask me anything about this, and Betsy saying that the town planner didn't have access is blatantly not true. That's, anyway, we could debate this all night, but
All right, Laura.
I just want to say that we have been, I think, making an effort and delivering on posting, when we post things to the town website, posting the original language and then posting the proposed language. And having a constantly evolving document that's posted in a public facing way, I think is not helpful often. So I wouldn't suggest that be part of the process. I think that there was some disorganization of SharePoint folders and so forth when there's still a lot of stuff that's just like out there and you have to search for things. So I think there was some organizational, some lack of organization in the folder structure, not imposed by Sarah, but just sort of pre-existing, for however long back. But I just want to say that Sarah and other members of the board, like we all worked pretty hard on this. I think there was no ill intent ever. I just want to reinforce that. And I think everything that got presented to the public in public facing ways showed very clearly the original language, the proposed language. And we also went through a lot of effort on why we were making the changes with articles in the Cricket and, presentations. And so we can certainly always improve our processes, but I just want to show some gratitude to the people who took, hours of volunteer work out of their professional and personal lives to get this done. Sarah and the others who really led this. So I just want to say that for the record.
Thank you, Laura. I think I agree. That Sarah did the yeoman's work and it showed on a town meeting floor. Okay, Greg, I see you still on. Greg, do you have a minute, if you can brief us, or if there's no information, that's fine, on the town planner search?
I'm sure we have 3 or 4 applications so far. Of those, one in particular is very strong. And so we're hoping to move forward with more formal interviews. And I'm assuming that it would perhaps be you, Ron, or someone you designate that would be able to sit in on those interviews. We're hoping to do that in the next week or 2. And assuming that we have a strong candidate to advance, then we would do that. And assuming we have a candidate to advance, we could certainly set up a time where the candidate could come before the full board as well.
And the timeline, just the plan is to hire someone this year, and Betsy's role, is she still, could you just define what the intent is?
Yeah, so ideally, we would have a new full-time planner on board in October. You know, if one of the candidates doesn't work out that way, we are pursuing sort of a plan B to see if we have to do another interim. Betsy will not be able to continue on beyond the October timeframe. She may be able to give us a few hours, you know, in October, November timeframe, but is not able to continue as interim beyond October. So hoping that we can either have the full-time or a new interim in place, certainly by the end of October.
Okay. Any questions from the board? Yeah.
It seems to me that, this is just my opinion, but that Betsy getting the technical assistance for the task force is a high priority prior to her departure. So that's, in terms of, I know there are lots of things that she's probably, and getting the zoning, making sure that the new zoning is published. I would hate to have somebody come in new or interim, particularly on the zoning. And it seems to me that if she's gonna depart, we might have a gap, that getting that technical assistance, I don't know what's involved, but that's just my opinion.
Are the candidates aware of the MBTA?
Yes, absolutely. Yep.
Well, they're all aware of the procedure and what the state's requiring.
Yeah, that's a high priority in terms of experience and skill set.
Right.
Okay, any other questions, Greg, or
Did you give a time frame that was,
we said October?
but for the board to be involved?
Yeah, well, I guess that's probably after if you kind of whittle this down, Greg, then you'll bring the candidates before the board or candidate. That's the intention.
So it could well be that we have one strong candidate that we would want to advance, unless the pool expands at this point. That's, I think, where we're at. And I would welcome having that person meet all of you in a public meeting, which would be fine.
Okay. Anything else? Otherwise, I'll take a motion to adjourn, and I will.
Just a logistical
Laura, sorry.
question. Date of the October 9th meeting, you talked about moving that. Should we
So
pick a
that's a
date?
good thing. I didn't realize that. So, I guess, Gail, are we okay to meet on the 10th of October, town meeting wise? Is there a conflict to get a room? Do we know yet, or shall we just, I'll inform the board tomorrow?
No, town hall is not open on 10/9, so we have to meet on 10/10.
And we can have this room?
Yes, you may have that room.
Oh, it's 10:10, so not what the agenda says. 10:10 and 10:25 and 9:25 for our next meeting. Hopefully,